Alrighty, sorry about the delay. Welcome back to another thrilling installment of Wordy Wednesdays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Fraggeth, and today we will be reading more of Downbelow Station by C.J. Cherryh. If you give me one sec here. This is cover art from what I think is the Russian edition. Where the title is, I believe, The World of Pell. Now, I might be wrong, and this is for another book entirely. In which case, my bad. But let me real quick. There it is. See if I can search its provenance here. Come on. Yeah, that's the one. The World of Pell. By, oddly, it gets auto-translated as KJ Cherryh. Don't know why, but it does. Thanks, Google Translate. I guess. Anyway, so there's actually two covers. It's split into two. Speaking of the number two, we start book two of Downbelow Station. It's not in separate volumes, it's all in one volume. And let's see, how far along are we? The last chapter was in June, I think, and now we're in September. So previously on, the situation at Pell at the station is pretty dire. It's being strained greatly by this massive and continuous influx of refugees from stations and planets that have been attacked by Union. Um, that the Mazian fleet keeps transporting there because it's like the only place they have left to transport to, as it turns out, um, or very nearly. It's either that or the Hinder stars, and nobody cares about those anymore. Um, they're old and decrepit and mothballed, um, and the Mazian fleet just doesn't have the resources to get them up and running. Um, the casual contempt with which the Mazian fleet is treated by Earth Company is rather fascinating. Um, I I'm sure there's a real world analog for that, but I'm struggling to think of one. If somebody does know of one, please feel free to impart that knowledge upon me. But it is a somewhat seemingly unique situation. Um, Actually, you know what could be an analog is, oh, that might be the real world analog is oh, what's that guy for the Dutch East India Company, the guy who wound up going to and taking over a big chunk of Indonesia for nutmeg, or Malaysia for nutmeg. Where did it come from? Was it Malaysia or Indonesia? That region of the world. Cohen, Kuhn, something like that. Um, this could be that analog to the military operation wing of a massive corporate entity. Um, that's kind of what the Maziani are. That's what the Mazian Mazia Mazian E letter I Maziani. Um, that's kind of what they are. In theory, in practice, they're a lot more beleaguered because they don't really have something anyone wants, and they're there to be peacekeepers. So I guess they're not a very good analog after all. Anyway, they're much beleaguered. I find that I find them kind of fascinating. Um, Only people who are more beleaguered at this point are the people who were living on Pell before the refugee crisis started, who are now, or on Pell Station, I should say, who are now being forced to leave their homes in order to adjust to the increased population. And indeed, some of them are being moved down below to the planet's surface itself, where there's a small colony. Um, uh, at the same time, you've got natives being moved up to the station because they're good with their hands and they're good at maintenance tasks. They can get into the maintenance tunnels and ducts more easily than humans can, and they only need a little supervision. They don't breathe the same atmosphere mix that we do. The Like humans, when they're down on Pell itself, have to put on environment suits and breathing masks until they're inside of like a little living space, which has been sealed off. Um, the same is true for the Hisa, which are the name of the collective species name of the people of Pell, the indigenes of Pell. Anyway, some of them are being moved up station to do maintenance tasks for the growing problem that is maintenance under a burdened system. Uh, oh yeah, and those Earth Company execs that were demanding to talk to Signe Mallory, well, they've gone to Viking, and Viking has already been taken over by Union, and now they're being taken to Union because they're trying to broker a deal. This can be profitable for all of us, they say. This is not profitable, what's going on now. We think it should be. Anyway, with those awkward introductions out of the way and halting, staggering introductions out of the way, let's get moving on to book two of Downbelow Station. Oh, I could have put in a bit about the Lucases, because the Lucases, I forget the name of the Lucas patriarch. What's his name? Not Angelo. That's the Constantine patriarch. Ah, here we go. Well, let's tally. John Lucas. There we go. They've got a plot going on where they're trying to work all sides, and we'll find out how that goes for them. Give me a sec. Sorry about that. All right, let's get reading. Book 2, Chapter 1. 1. Down below main base. 9/2/52. The skies were clear for the morning, but only a few fleecy puffs overhead and a line of them marshalling themselves across the northern horizon, beyond the river. It was a long view. It usually needed a day and a half for the horizon clouds to come down to Downbelow base, and they planned to take advantage of that break, patching the washout which had cut them off from Base 4 and all the further camps down the chain. It was, they hoped, the last of the storms of winter. The buds on the trees were swelling to bursting,
and the grain sprouts, crowded by flood against the crossed beam lattices in the fields, would soon want thinning and transplanting to their permanent beds. Main Base would be the first to dry out, and then the bases downriver. The river was some bit lower today, so the report came in from the mill. Emilio saw the supply crawler off on its way down the muddy road downriver, and turned his back, walked the slow, well-trampled way toward higher ground and the domes sunk in the hills, domes which had gotten to be twice as numerous as before, not to mention those that had transferred down the road. Compressors thunked along, out of rhythm, the unending pulse of humanity on down below. Pumps labored, adding to the thumping, belching out the water which had seeped into the domes despite their best efforts to waterproof the floors, more pumps working down by the mill dikes and over by the fields. They would not cease until the logs in the fields stood clear. Spring. Probably the air smelled delightful to a native. Humans had little impression of it, breathing in wet hisses and stops through the masks. Emilio found the sun pleasant on his back, enjoying that much of the day. Downers skipped about, carrying out their tasks with less address than exuberance. Would rather make 10 scurrying trips with a handful than one uncomfortable laden passage to anywhere. They laughed, dropped what light loads they bore to play pranks on any excuse. He was frankly surprised that they were still at work with spring coming on so in earnest. The first clear night they had kept all the camp awake with their chatter, their happy pointing at the starry heavens and talking to the stars. The first clear dawn they had waved their arms to the rising sun and shouted and cheered for the coming light. But humans had gone about with a brighter mood that day, too, with the first clear sign of winter's ending. Now it was markedly warmer. The females had turned smugly alluring, and the males had turned giddy. There was a good deal of what might be downer singing from the thickets and the budding trees on the hills, trills and chatter and whistles soft and sultry. It was not as giddy as it would get when the trees sprang into full bloom. There would come a time that the Hisa would lose all interest in work, and would set off on their wanderings, females first and solitary, and the males doggedly following, to places where humans did not intrude. A good number of the third season females would spend the summer getting rounder and rounder, at least as round as the wiry Hisa became, to give birth in winter, snugged away in hillside tunnels, little mites all limbs and ruddy baby fur, who would be scampering about on their own in the next spring, what little humans saw of them. He passed the Hisa games, walked up the crushed rock pathway to operations, the dome highest on the hill. His ears picked up a crunching on the rocks behind him, and he looked back to find Satin limping along in his wake, arms out for balance, bare feet on sharp stones, and her imp's face screwed up in pain from the path designed for human boots. He grinned at the imitation of his strides. She stood and grinned at him, usually splendid in soft pelts and beads and a red rag, unusually splendid in soft pelts and beads and a red rag of synthetic cloth. "Shuttle comes, Constantine man." It was so. There was a landing due on this clear day. He had promised her, despite good sense, despite axioms that world-synced pairs were unstable in the spring season, that she and her mate might work a term on station. If there was a downer who had staggered about under too heavy loads, it was Satin. She had tried desperately to impress him. "See, Constantine man, I work good."
"Pack to go,"
he observed of her. She displayed the several small bags of no knowing what she had hung about her person, patted them, and grinned delightedly. "I packed." And then her face went sad, and she held out her open arms. "Come love you, Constantine man, you and your wife. You and you friend. Sorry. Wife. The Hisa had never figured out husband and wife.
"Come in."
He bade her, touched by such a gesture. Her eyes lit with pleasure. Downers were discouraged even from the vicinity of the operations dome. It was very rare that one was invited inside. He walked down the wooden steps, wiped his boots on the matting, held the door for her, and waited for her to adjust her own breather from about her neck before he opened the inner seal. A few working humans looked up, stared, some frowning at the presence, went back to their jobs. A number of the techs had offices in the dome, divided off by low wicker screens. The area he shared with Milico was farthest back, where the only solid wall in the great dome afforded him and Milico private residential space, a 10-foot section with a woven mat floor, sleeping quarters, and office at once. He opened that door beside the lockers, and Satin followed him in, staring about her as if she could not absorb the half of what she saw. Not used to roofs, he thought, imagining how great a change it was going to be for a Downer suddenly shipped to station. No winds, no sun, only steel about, poor Satin. Well, Milico exclaimed, looking up from the spread of charts on their bed.
Love you.
Satin said, and came with absolute confidence, embraced Milico, hugged her cheek to cheek around the obstacle of the breather. You're going away, said Milico.
Go to you home, she said. See Bennett home.
She hesitated, folded hands diffidently behind her, bobbed a little, looking from one to the other of them.
Love Bennett man. See he home. Fill up eyes he home. Make warm, warm we eyes.
Sometimes Downer talk made little sense, sometimes meanings shot through the babble with astonishing clarity. Emilio gazed on her with somewhat of guilt that for as long as they had dealt with Downers, there was none of them who could manage more than a few of the chattering Downer words. Bennett had been best at it. The Hisa loved gifts. He thought of one on the shelf by the bed, a shell he had found by the riverside. He got it and gave it to her, and her dark eyes shone. She flung her arms about him.
Love you,
She announced. Love you too, Satin, he told her. And he put his arms about her shoulders, walked her out through the outer offices to the lock, set her through. Beyond the plastic, she opened the outer door, took her mask off, and grinned at him, waved her hand. I go work, she told him. The shuttle was due. A human worker would not have been working on the day he was leaving assignment, but Satin headed away with a slam of the flimsy door and anxious enthusiasm, as if at this late date someone's mind could be changed. Or perhaps it was unfair to attach to her any human motives. Perhaps it was joy or gratitude. Downers understood no wages. Gifts, they said. Bennett Jacent had understood them. The Downers tended that grave, laid shells there, perfect ones, skins, set up the strange knobby sculptures that meant something important to them. He turned, walked back through the operations center to his own quarters and Milico. He took off his jacket, hung it on the peg, breather still about his neck, an ornament they all wore from the time clothing went on in the morning till it went off at night. Got the weather report from station, Milico said. We're going to catch it again in a day or so after the next one hits us. There's a big storm brewing out to sea. He swore. So much for hopes of spring. She made a place for him among the charts on the bed, and he sat down and looked at the damages she had red-penciled. Flood areas, station was able to show them, down the long chains of beads which were the camps they had established, along unpaved, hand-hacked roads. Oh, it's going to get worse, Milico said, showing him the topographical chart. Comp projects enough rain with this one to get us flooded in the blue zones again, right up to Base 2's doorstep, but most of the road bed should be above the flood line. Emilio scowled, expelled a soft breath. We'll hope. The road was the important thing. The fields would flood for weeks more without harm, except to their schedules. Local grains thrived on the water, depended on it in the initial stages of their natural cycles. The lattices kept young plants from going downriver. It was human machinery and human tempers which suffered most. Downers have the right idea, he said. Give up during the winter rains, wander off when the trees bloom, make love, nest high, and wait for the grain to ripen. Milliko grinned, still marking her charts. He sighed, unregarded, pulled over the slab of plastic which served him as a writing desk, and started making out personnel assignments, rearranging priorities with the equipment. Perhaps, he thought, perhaps if he pleaded with the Downers, arranged some special gifts, they would hang on a little longer before their seasonal desertion. He regretted losing Satin and Bluetooth. The pair of them had been of enormous help, persuading their fellows in outright argument when it came to something their Constantine man wanted very badly. But that went both ways. Satin and Bluetooth wanted to go. They wanted something now in his power to give, and it was their time to have their way, before the spring came on them and they passed all self-control. They were dispersing old hands and trainees and queue assignees down the road to each of the new bases, trying to keep proportions which would not leave staff vulnerable to riot, trying to make the queue folk into workers, against their belief that they were being used. Tried to work with morale. It was the willing ones they moved out, and the surliest main base had to keep, in that one huge dome, many times enlarged and patched onto until dome was a misnomer. It spread irregularly over the next hill, a constant difficulty to them. Human workers occupied the several domes next, choice ones, comfortable ones. They were always reluctant to be transferred out to more primitive conditions at the wells or the new camps, alone with the forest and the floods and Q and strange Hisa. Communication was always the problem. They were linked by comm, but it was still lonely out there. Ideally, they wanted aircraft links, but the one flimsy aircraft they had built some years back had crashed on the landing field 2 years ago. Light aircraft and Downbelow's storms did not agree. Hacking a landing site for shuttles, that was on the schedule, at least for Base 3, but the cutting of trees had to be worked out with the Downers, and that was touchy. With the tech level they managed on world, crawlers were still the most efficient way of getting about, patient and slow as the pace of life on Downbelow had always been, chugging away through mud and flood to the wonderment and delight of downers. Petrol and grains, wood and winter vegetables, dried fish, an experiment in domesticating the knee-high pitsu, which downers hunted. "You bad," Downers had declared in the matter. "Make they warm in you camp and you eat. No good this thing." But Downers at Base 1 had become herders, and they had all learned to eat domestic meat. Lucas had ordered it, and this was one Lucas project that had worked well. Humans on Downbelow fared well enough, equipped and fed themselves in What? Humans on Downbelow fared well enough, equipped. There's no punctuation after enough. Uh, I'm going to assume they're supposed to. Never mind. Humans on Downbelow fared well enough, equipped and fed themselves and station, even with the influx they had gotten. That was no small task. The manufactories up on station and the manufactories here on Downbelow were working non-stop. Self-sufficiency, to duplicate every item they normally imported, to fill every quota not alone for themselves but for the overburdened station, and to stockpile what they could. It was all falling into their laps here on Downbelow, the excess population, the burden of station-bred people. Their own and refugees, who had never set foot on a world. Sorry. Life goes on. Let's try that sentence again. It's a long one. Self-sufficiency. To duplicate every item they normally imported, to fill every quota not alone for themselves but for the overburdened station, and to stockpile what they could. It was all falling into their laps here on Downbelow, the excess population, the burden of station-bred people, their own and refugees, who had never set foot on a world. They could no longer depend on the trade which had once woven Viking and mariner, Esperance and Panparis, and Russells and voyagers and others into a great circle of their own, supplying each other's needs. None of the other stations could have gone it alone. None had the living world it took, a living world and hands to manage it. There were plans on the board now, the first crews moved, to go for the on-world mining they had long delayed, duplicating materials already available in Pell's system at large, just in case things got worse than anyone wanted to think. They would get massive new programs underway this summer, when downers were receptive to approach again, get it well moving in fall when the downers hit their working season, when cool winds made them think of winter again and they seemed never to rest, working for humans and working to carry soft mosses into their tunnels in the wooded hills. Downbelow was due to change. Its human population had quadrupled. He mourned it. Milico did. They had gridded off areas already, Milico's ever-present charts, places which no human should ever touch, the beautiful places, the sites they knew for holy and the places vital to the cycles of Hisa and wild things alike. Ram it through council in their own generation, even this year before the pressures mounted. Set up protections for the things which had to endure. The pressure was already with them. Scars were already on the land, the smoke of the mill, the stumps of trees, the ugly domes and fields imposed on the riverside and being hacked out all along the muddy roads. They had wanted to beautify it as they went, make gardens, camouflage roads and domes, and that chance was gone. They would not, he and Milico were resolved together, would not let more damage happen. They loved Downbelow, the best and the worst of it, the maddening Hisa and the violence of the storms. There was always the station for human refuge. Antiseptic corridors and soft furniture were always waiting. But Milico thrived here as he did. They made This is just getting silly. I'm gonna put the thing in another room if it does it again. Where were we? But Milico thrived here as he did. They made pleasant love at night with the rain pattering away on the plastic dome, with the compressors thumping away in the dark and Downbelow's night creatures singing madly just outside. They enjoyed the changes the sky made hour by hour, the sound of the wind in the grass, and the forest about them, laughed at downer pranks, and ruled the whole world, with power to solve everything but the weather. They missed home, missed family and that different, wider world, but they talked otherwise, had talked even of building a dome to themselves in their spare time in years to come when homes could be built here, a hope which had been closer a year or so ago when the Downbelow establishment had been quiet and easy before Mallory and the others had come, before Q. Now they simply figured how to survive at the level at which they were living. Moved population about under guard for fear of what that population might try to do. Opened new bases at the most primitive level, ill prepared. Tried to care for the land and the downers at once, and to pretend that nothing was amiss on station. He finished the assignments, walked out, and handed them to the dispatcher, Ernst, who was also accountant and comp man. They all did a multitude of jobs. He walked back again into his bedroom office, surveyed Milico and her lapful of charts. "Want lunch?" he asked. He reckoned on going to the mill in the afternoon, hoped now for a quiet cup of coffee and first access to the microwave which was the dome's other luxury of rank. Time to sit and relax. "I'm nearly done," she said. A bell rang, 3 sharp pulses, disarranging the day. The shuttle was coming in early. He had assumed it for the evening slot. He shook his head. There's still time for lunch, he said. The shuttle was down before they were done. Everyone in operations had come to the same conclusion, and the dispatcher, Ernst, directed things between bites of sandwich. It was a hard day for everyone. Emilio swallowed the last bite, drank the last of his coffee, and gathered up his jacket. Milico was putting hers on.
Got us some more Q-types.
Jim Ernst said from the dispatch desk, and moments later, loudly enough to carry through all the dome,
200 of them. They've got 'em jammed in that friggin' hold like dried fish. Shuttle, what are we supposed to do with 'em?
The answer crackled back, garbled and a few intelligible words. Emilio shook his head in exasperation and walked over to lean above Jim Ernst. Advise Q Dome they're going to have to accept some crowding until we can make some more transfers down the road.
Most of Q is home at lunch,
Ernst reminded him. As policy, they avoided announcements when all of Q was gathered. They were inclined to irrational hysteria. Do it, he told Ernst, and Ernst relayed the information. Emilio pulled the breather up and started out, Milico close behind him. The biggest shuttle had come down, disgorging the few items of supply they had requested from station. Most of the goods flowed in the other direction, canisters of Downbelow products waiting in the warehouse domes to be loaded and taken up to feed Pell. The first of the passengers came down the ramp as they reached the landing circle beyond the hill, crushed-looking folk in coveralls who had probably been frightened to death in transfer, jammed into a cargo hold in greater number than should have been, certainly in greater number than they needed on Downbelow all at one moment. There were a few more prosperous-looking volunteers, losers in the lottery process. They walked aside. But guards off the shuttle waited with rifles to herd the Q assignees into a group. There were old people with them, and a dozen young children at least, families and fragments of families if it held to form, all such folk as did not survive. Oh, sorry. All such folk as did not survive well in station quarantine. Humanitarian transfer. People like this took up space and used a compressor, and by their classification could not be trusted near the lighter jobs, those tasks involving critical machinery. They had to be assigned manual labor, such of it as they could bear. And the children, at least there were none too young to work or too young to understand about wearing the breathers or how to change a breather cylinder in a hurry.
So many fragile ones,
Milico said.
What does your father think we are down here?
He shrugged.
Better than queue up above, I suppose. Easier. I hope those new compressors are in the load, and the plastic sheeting.
Bet they're not.
Milico said dourly. There was a shrieking from over the hill toward base and the domes. Downer screeches, not an uncommon thing. He looked over his shoulder and saw nothing, and paid it no mind. The disembarking refugees had stopped at the sound. Staff moved them on. The shrieking kept up. That was not normal. He turned, and Milico did.
Stay here.
He said, and keep a hand on matters. Oh, there's no
Starting quotation mark there. And keep a hand on matters.
He started running up the path over the hill, dizzy at once with the breather's limitations. He crested the rise, and the domes came into sight, and there was in front of huge Q Dome what had the look of a fight, a ring of downers enclosing a human disturbance, more and more Q folk boiling out of the dome. He sucked air and ran all out, and one of the downers broke from the group below, came running with all out haste. Satin's Bluetooth. He knew the fellow by the color of him, which was uncommonly red-brown for an adult.
Lucas, man!
Oh, that's right, he doesn't wear a mask, because he doesn't have to. Lucas, man! Bluetooth hissed, falling in by him as he ran, bobbing and dancing in his anxiety. Lucas, man's all mad! That took no translation. He knew the game when he saw the guards there. Bran Hale and crew, the field supervisors. There was a knot of shouting Q folk, and the guards had guns leveled. Hale and his men had gotten one youth away from the group, ripped his breather off so that he was choking, would stop breathing if it kept up. They held the fainting boy among them as hostage, a gun on him, holding rifles on the others, and the Q folk and the downers on the edges were screaming.
Stop that!
Emilio shouted.
Break it up!
No one regarded him, and he waded in alone, Bluetooth hanging back from him. He pushed men with rifles and had to push more than once, realizing all at once that he had no gun, that he was bare-handed and alone, and that there were no witnesses but Downers and Q. They gave ground. He snatched the boy from those who held him, and the boy collapsed to the ground. He knelt down, feeling his own back naked, picked up the breather that lay there and got it over the boy's face, pressed it there. Some of the Q folk tried to close in, and one of Hale's men fired at their feet.
No more of that!
Emilio shouted. He stood up, shaking in every muscle, staring at the several score Q workers outside, at others still jammed by their own numbers within the dome, at 10 armed men who had rifles leveled. He was shaking in every muscle, thinking of riot, of Milico just over the hill, of having them close in on him.
Back up!
He yelled at Q,
Ease off!
and rounded on Bran Hale, young, sullen, and insolent.
What happened here?
Tried to escape, Hale said. Mask fell off in the fight. Tried to get a gun.
That's a lie! The Q folk shouted in a babble of variants, and tried to drown Hale's voice.
Truth, Hale said. They don't want more refugees in their dome. A fight started and this troublemaker tried to bolt. We caught him.
There was a chorus of protest from the Q folk. A woman in the fore was crying. Emilio looked about him, having difficulty with his own breathing. At his feet the boy had seemed to come to, writhing and coughing. The Downers clustered together, dark eyes solemn.
Bluetooth,
He said.
what happened?
Bluetooth's eyes shifted to Bran Hale's man. No more than that. Me eyes see, said another voice. Satin strode through, braced herself with several bobs of distress. Her voice was high-pitched, brittle. Hale push he friend, hard with gun, bad push she. There were shouts from Hale's side, derision, shouts from the Q side. He yelled for quiet. It was not a lie. He knew Downers and he knew Hale. It was not a lie.
They took his breather?
Take, Satin said, and clamped her mouth firmly shut. Her eyes showed fear.
All right.
Emilio sucked in a deep breath, looked directly at Bran Hale's hard face.
We'd better continue this discussion in my office.
We talk right here,
Hale said. He had his crowd about him. His advantage. Emilio matched him stare for stare. It was all he could do, with no weapons and no force to back him.
Downer's word, Hale said, isn't testimony. You don't insult me on any Downer's word, Mr. Constantine. No, sir.
He could walk away, back down. Surely operations and the regular workers could see what was going on. Maybe they had looked out from their domes and preferred not to see. Accidents could happen in this place, even to a Constantine. For a long time, the authority on Downbelow had been John Lucas and his hand-picked men. He could walk away, maybe reach operations, call help for himself from the shuttle, if Hale let him. And it would be told for the rest of his life how Emilio Constantine handled threats.
You pack,
He said softly.
and you be on that shuttle when it leaves. All of you.
On a Downer bitch's word?
Hale lost his dignity, chose to shout. He could afford to. Some of the rifles had turned his way.
Get out,
Emilio said.
on my word. Be on that shuttle. Your tour here is over.
He saw Hale's tension, the shift of eyes. Someone did move. A rifle went off, sizzled into the mud. One of the Q men had struck it down. There was a second when it looked like riot.
Out!
Emilio repeated. Suddenly, the balance of power was shifted. Young workers were to the fore of Q, and their own gang boss, Way. Hale shifted eyes left and right, remeasured things, finally gave a curt nod to his companions. They moved out. Emilio stood watching them in their swaggering retreat to the common barracks, even yet not believing that trouble was over. Beside him, Bluetooth let out a long hiss, and Satin made a spitting sound. His own muscles were quivering with the fight that had not happened. He heard a sough of air, the dome sagging as the rest of Q surged out, all 300 of them, breaching their lock wide open. He looked at them, alone with them.
You take those new transfers into your dome, and you take them in without bickering and without argument. We'll make new diggings. You will, and they will, quick as possible. You want them to sleep in the open? Don't you give me any nonsense about it. Yes, sir.
Sorry, that's italicized,
Yes, sir.
Way answered after a moment. The woman who had been crying edged forward. Emilio stepped back, and she bent down to help the stricken boy, who was struggling to sit up. Mother, he reckoned. Others came and helped the boy up. There was a good deal of commotion about it. Emilio grasped the youth's arm.
Want you in for a medical,
He said.
Two of you take him over to operations.
They hesitated. Guards were supposed to escort them. There were no guards, he realized in that instant. He had just ordered all the security forces in main base off-world.
Go on inside,
He said to the rest,
get that dome normalized. I'll talk to you about it later.
and while he had their attention,
Look around you. There's all of a world here, blast you all. Give us help. Talk to me if there's some complaint. I'll see you get access. We're all crowded here.
I can't flip pages one-handed.
We're all crowded here, all of us. Come look at my quarters if you think otherwise. I'll give some of you the tour if you don't believe me. We live like this because we're building. Help us build, and it can be good here for all of us.
Frightened eyes stared at him. No belief. They had come in on overcrowded, dying ships, had been in queue on station, lived here in mud and close quarters, moved about under guns. He let go his breath and his anger.
Go on, he said. Break it up. Get about your business. Make room for those people.
They moved, the boy and a couple of the young men toward operations, the rest back into their dome. The flimsy doors closed in sequence this time, locking them through. Group after group, until all were gone, and the deflated dome crest began to lose some of its wrinkles as the compressor thumped away. There was a soft chattering, a bobbing of bodies. The Downers were still with him. He put out his hand and touched Bluetooth. The Downer touched his hand in turn, a calloused brush of flesh, bobbed several times in the residue of excitement. At his other side stood Satin, arms clenched about her, her dark eyes darker still and wide. All about him, Downers, with that same disturbed look. Human quarrel, violence, alien to them. Downers would strike in a moment's anger, but only to sting. He had never seen them quarrel in groups, had never seen weapons. Their knives were only tools and hunting implements. They killed only game. What did they think, he wondered? What did they imagine at such a sight? Humans turning guns on each other. We go up above, Satin said.
Yes, he agreed. You still go. It was good, Satin. Bluetooth, all of you. It was good you came to tell me.
There was a general bobbing, expressions of relief among all the Hisa, as if they had not been sure. The thought, uh, the thought occurred to him that he had ordered Hale and his men off on that same shuttle, that human spite might still make things uncomfortable.
I'll talk to the man in charge of the ship,
He told them.
You and Hale will be in different parts of the ship. No trouble for you, I promise.
Good, 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 Satin breathed and hugged him. He stroked her shoulder, turned and received an embrace from Bluetooth as well, patted his rougher pelt. He left them and started toward the crest of the hill, on the track to the landing site, and stopped at the sight of several figures standing there. Milico. Two others. All had rifles. He felt a sudden surge of relief to think he had had someone at his back after all. He waved his hand that it was all right, hastened toward them. Milico came quickest, and he hugged her. Milico's two companions caught up, two guards off the shuttle.
I'm sending some personnel up with you,
He said to them.
discharged, and I'm filing charges. I don't want them armed. I don't want them armed. I'm also sending up some downers, and I don't want the two groups near each other, not at any time. Yes, sir.
The two guards were blank of comment, objected to nothing.
You can go back, he said. Start moving the assignees this way. It's all right.
They went about their orders. Milico kept the rifle she had borrowed from someone, stood against his side, her arm tight about him, his about her.
Hale's lot, he said. I'm packing them all off.
That leaves us no guards.
Q wasn't the trouble. I'm calling station about this one.
His stomach tightened, reaction beginning to settle on him.
I guess they saw you on the ridge. Maybe that changed their minds.
Station's got a crisis alert. I thought sure it was Q. Shuttle called Station Central.
Better get to operations and cancel it. Oh, sorry. Better get to operations then and cancel it.
He drew her about. They walked down the slope, in the direction of the dome. His knees were water.
I wasn't up there,
She said.
Where?
on the ridge. By the time we arrived up there, there were just downers in Q.
He swore, marveling then that he had won that bluff.
We're well rid of Bran Hale,
He said. He reached the trough among the hills, walked the bridge over the water hoses and up again, across to operations. Inside, the boy was submitting to the medic's attention, and a pair of techs was standing armed with pistols, keeping a nervous watch on the Q folk who had brought him in. Emilio motioned a negative to them. They cautiously put them away, looked unhappy with the whole situation. Carefully neutral, Emilio thought. They would have gone with any winner of the quarrel out there, no help to him. He was not angry for it, only disappointed. You all right, sir? Jim Ernst asked. He nodded, stood watching, with Milico beside him.
Call station,
He said after a moment. Report it settled. Two. They nestled in together, in the dark space humans had found for them, in the great empty belly of the ship, a place which echoed fearfully with machinery. They had to use the breathers, first of what might be many discomforts. They tied themselves to the handholds, as humans had warned them they must, to be safe, and Satin hugged Bluetooth Dalut Hosme, hating the feel of the place and the cold and the discomfort of the breathers, and most of all fearing because they were told that they must tie themselves for safety. She had not thought of ships in terms of walls and roofs, which frightened her. Never had she imagined the flight of the ships as something so violent they might be dashed to death, but as something free as the soaring birds, grand and delirious. She shivered with her back against the cushions humans had given them, shivered and tried to cease, felt Bluetooth shiver too.
We could go back,
He said, for this was not of his choosing. She said nothing, clamped her jaw against the urge to cry that yes, they should, that they should call the humans and tell them that two very small, very unhappy downers had changed their minds. Then there was the sound of the engines. She knew what that was, had heard it often, felt it now, a terror in her bones.
We will see great sun.
She said, now that it was irrevocable.
We will see Bennett's home.
Bluetooth held her tighter.
Bennett.
He repeated, a name which comforted them both.
Bennett Jacent. We will see the spirit images of the up above,
she said.
We will see the sun.
There was a great weight on them, a sense of moving, of being crushed at once. His grip hurt her. She held him no less tightly. His grip hurt her. She held him no less tightly. The thought came to her that they might be crushed unnoticed by the great power which humans endured, that perhaps humans had forgotten them here in the deep dark of this ship. But no, downers came and went. Hisa survived this great force, and flew, and saw all the wonders which inhabited the up above, walked where they might look down on the stars, and looked into the face of great sun, filled their eyes with good things. This waited for them. It was now the spring, and the heat had begun in her and in him, and she had chosen the journey she would make, longer than all journeys, and the high place higher than all high places, where she would spend her first spring. The pressure eased. They still held to each other, still feeling motion. It was a very far flight. They had been warned so. They must not loose themselves until a man came and told them. The Constantin had told them what to do, and they would surely be safe. Satin felt so, with a faith which increased as the force grew less, and she knew that they had lived. They were on their way. They flew. She clutched the shell which Constantin had given her, the gift which marked this time for her, and about her was the red cloth which was her special treasure, the best thing, the honor that Bennett himself had given her a name. She felt the more secure for these things, and for Bluetooth, for whom she felt an increasing fondness, true affection, not the springtime heat of mating. He was not the biggest, and far from the handsomest, but he was clever and clear-headed. Not wholly. He dug in one of the pouches he carried, brought out a small bit of twig on which the buds had burst, moved his breather to smell it, offered it to her. It brought with them the world, the riverside, and promises. She felt a flood of heat which turned her sweating despite the chill. It was unnatural, being so close to him and not having the freedom of the land, places to run, the restlessness which would lead her further and further into the lonely lands where only the images stood. They were traveling in a strange and different way, in a way that great sun looked down upon all the same, and so she needed to do nothing. She accepted Bluetooth's attentions, nervously at first, and then with increasing easiness, for it was right. The games they would have played on the face of the land, until he was the last male determined enough to follow where she led, were not needed. He was the one who had come farthest, and he was here, and it was very right. The motion of the ship changed. They held each other a moment in fear, but this men had warned them of, and they had heard that there was a time of great strangeness. They laughed, and joined, and ceased, giddy and delirious. They marveled at the bit of blossoming twig which floated by them in the air, which moved when they batted at it by turns. She reached carefully and plucked it from the air, and laughed again, letting it free.
This is where Sun lives,
Bluetooth surmised. She thought that it must be so, imagined Sun drifting majestically through the light of his power, and themselves swimming in it, toward the up above, the metal home of humans, which held out arms for them. They joined, and joined again, in spasms of joy. After long and long came another change. Little stresses at the bindings, very gentle, and by they began to feel heavy again.
We are coming down.
Satin thought aloud. But they stayed quiet, remembering what they had been told, that they must wait on a man to tell them it was safe. and there was a series of jolts and terrible noises, so that their arms clenched about each other. But the ground was solid under them now. The speaker overhead rang with human voices giving instructions, and none of them sounded frightened. Rather as humans usually sounded, in a hurry and humorless.
I think we are all right.
Bluetooth said.
We must stay still.
She reminded him.
They will forget us. They will not.
She said. But she had doubts herself. So dark the place was, and so desolate. Just a little light where they were, above them. There was a terrible clash of metal. The door through which they had come in opened, and there was no view of hills and forest now, but of a ribbed throat-like passage which blasted cold air at them. A man came up it, dressed in brown, carrying one of the hand speakers. "Come in," he told them, and they made haste to untie themselves. Satin stood up and found her legs. Satin stood up and found her legs shaking. She leaned on Bluetooth, and he staggered too. The man gave them gifts, silver cords to wear. "Your numbers," he said. "Always wear them." He took their names and gestured out the passage. "Come with me. We'll get you checked in." They followed, down the frightening passage, out into a place like the ship belly where they had been, metal and cold, but very, very huge. Satin stared about her, shivering.
We are in a bigger ship,
She said.
This is a ship too.
And to the human,
Man, we in up above?
"This is the station," the human said. A hint of cold settled on Satin's heart. She had hoped for sights, for the warmth of the sun. She chided herself to patience that these things would come, that it would yet be beautiful. Three. Pell, Blue Sector 5, September 2nd, 2352. The apartment was tidied, the odds and ends tucked into hampers. Damon shrugged into his jacket, straightened his collar. Eileen was still dressing, fussing at a waistline that, perhaps, bound a little. It was the second suit she had tried. She looked frustrated with this one, too. He walked up behind her and gave her a gentle hug about the middle, met her eyes in the mirror. "You look fine. So what if it shows a little?" She studied them both in the mirror, put her hand on his. "It looks more like I'm gaining weight." "You look wonderful," he said, expecting a smile. Her mirrored face stayed anxious. He lingered a moment, held her because she seemed to want that. "Is it all right?" he asked. She had, perhaps, overdone, and gone out of her way to look right, had gotten special items from commissary, was nervous about the whole evening, he thought. Therefore the effort. Therefore the fretting about small things. "Does having Tally come here bother you?" Her fingers traced his slowly. "I don't think it does, but I'm not sure I know what to say to him. I've never entertained a unioner." He dropped his arms, looked her in the eyes when she turned about. The exhausting preparations, all the anxiety to please. It was not enthusiasm. He had feared so. "You suggested it. I asked, were you sure? Eileen, if you felt in the least awkward in it, he's ridden your conscience for over 3 months. Forget my qualms. I'm curious. Shouldn't I be?" He suspected things, a more than willingness to accommodate him, that balance sheet Eileen kept, gratitude, maybe, or her way of trying to tell him she cared. He remembered the long evenings, Eileen brooding on her side of the table, he on his, her burden Estelle and his. her burden Estelle, and his the lives he handled. He had talked about Tally a certain night. He ended up. Just CJ Cherry things. It's a very particular kind of prose that sometimes really trips me up. Um, he had talked about Tally a certain night. He ended up listening to her instead. And when the chance came, such gestures were like Eileen, he could not remember bringing her another problem but that. So she took it, tried to solve it, however hard it was. Unioner. He had no way of knowing what she felt under those circumstances. Had thought he knew. "Don't look that way," she said. "I'm curious," I said. "But it's the social situation. What do you say? What do you say? Talk over old times? Have we possibly met before, Mr. Tally? Exchanged fire, maybe? Or maybe we talk over family. How's yours, Mr. Tally? Or maybe we talk about hospital. How have you enjoyed your stay on Pell, Mr. Tally?" "Eileen, you asked." "I wish I'd known how you felt about it. How do you feel about it, honestly?" "Awkward," he confessed, leaned against the counter. "But, Eileen, if you want to know what I feel about it, I'm uneasy, just uneasy. He's coming here, and he'll be here for us to entertain, and frankly, I don't know what we're going to do with him." She turned to the mirror and tugged at the waistline. "All of which is what I think. I'm hoping he'll be at ease, and we'll all have a pleasant evening." He could see it otherwise. Long silences. "I've got to go get him," he said. "He'll be waiting." And then, with a happier thought, "Why don't we go up to the concourse? Never mind the things here. It might make things easier all round, neither of us having to play host." Her eyes lightened. "Meet you there? I'll get a table. There's nothing that can't go in the freeze." "Do it." He kissed her on the ear, all that was available, and he gave her a pat, headed out in haste to make up the time. The security desk sent a call back for Tally, and he was quick in coming down the hall. A new suit, everything new. Everything new. Damon met him and held out his hand. Tally's face took on a different smile as he took it, quickly faded. "You're already checked out," Damon told him, and gathered up a small plastic wallet from the desk, gave it to him. "When you check in again, this makes it all automatic. Those are your ID papers and your credit card and a chit with your comp number. You memorize the comp number and destroy the chit." Tally looked at the papers inside, visibly moved. "I'm discharged?" Evidently, staff had not gotten around to telling him. His hands trembled, slender fingers shaking in their course over the fine printed words. He stared at them, taking time to absorb the matter, until Damon touched his sleeve, drew him from the desk and down the corridor. "You look well," Damon said. It was so. Their images reflected back from the transport doors ahead, dark and light, his own solid, aquiline darkness, and Tally's pallor like illusions. Of a sudden he thought of Eileen, felt the least insecurity in Tally's presence, the companion in which he felt all his faults. Not alone the look of him, but the look from inside that stared at him guiltless, which had always been guiltless. "What do I say to him?" He echoed Eileen's ugly questions. "Sorry? Sorry I never got around to reading your folder? Sorry I executed you? We were pressed for time? Forgive me. Usually we do better?" He opened the door, and Tally met his eyes in passing through. No accusations, no bitterness. He doesn't remember. Can't. "Your pass," Damon said as they walked toward the lift, "is what's called white-tagged. See the colored circles by the door there? There's a white one, too. Your card is a key. So is your comp number. If you see a white circle, you have access by card or number. The computer will accept it. Don't try anything where there's no white. You'll have alarms sounding and security running in a hurry. You know such systems, don't you?" "I understand." "You recall your comp skills?" A few spaces of silence. Arms comp is specialized, but I recall some theory.
Much of it?
If I sat in front of a board, probably I would remember.
Do you remember me?
They had reached the lift. Damon punched the buttons for private call, privilege of his security clearance. He wanted no crowd. He turned, met Tally's too open gaze. Normal adults flinched, moved the eyes, glanced this way and that, focused on one and the other detail. Tally's stare lacked such movements, like a madman's, or a child's, or a graven god's. I remember you asking that before, Tally said. You're one of the Constantins. You own Pell, don't you?
Not own, but we've been here a long time.
I haven't, have I? An undertone of worry. What is it? Damon wondered, with a crawling of his own skin.
What is it to know bits of your mind are gone? How can anything make sense? We met when you came here. You ought to know. I'm the one who agreed to the adjustment. Legal Affairs Office. I signed the commitment papers.
There was then a little flinching. The car arrived. Damon put his hand inside to hold the door.
You gave me the papers.
You gave me the papers, Tally said. He stepped inside, and Damon followed, let the door close. The car started moving to the green he had coded. You kept coming to see me. You were the one who was there so often, weren't you?
Damon shrugged. I didn't want what happened. I didn't think it was right. You understand that.
Do you want something of me? Willingness was implicit in the tone, at least acquiescence, in all things, anyway. Damon returned the stare.
Forgiveness, maybe,
he said, cynically. That's easy.
Is it?
That's why you came? That's why you came to see me? Why you asked me to come with you now?
What did you suppose?
The wide-field stare clouded a bit, seemed to focus. I have no way to know. It's kind of you to come.
Did you think it might not be kind?
I don't know how much memory I have. I know there are gaps. I could have known you before. I could remember things that aren't so. It's all the same. You did nothing to me, did you?
You could have stopped it.
I asked for adjustment, didn't I? I thought that I asked.
You asked, yes.
Then I remember something right. Or they told me. I don't know. Shall I go on with you, or is that all you wanted?
You'd rather not go?
A series of blinks. I thought, well, when I wasn't so well, that I might have known you. I had no memory at all then. I was glad you came. It was someone outside the walls. And the books. Thank you for the books. I was very glad to have them.
Look at me.
Tally did so, an instant centering, a touch of apprehension.
I want you to come. I'd like you to come. That's all.
To where you said? To meet your wife?
To meet Aline, and to see Pell. The better side of it.
All right. Tally's regard stayed with him. The drifting, he thought. That was defense, retreat. The direct gaze trusted. From a man with gaps in his memory, trust was all-encompassing.
I know you, Damon said. I've read the hospital proceedings. I know things about you I don't know about my own brother. I think it's fair to tell you that.
Everyone's read them.
Who? Everyone?
Everyone I know. The doctors, all of them in the center. He thought that over. Hated the thought that anyone should submit to that much intrusion.
The transcripts will be erased.
Like me. The ghost of a smile quirked Tally's mouth. Sadness.
It wasn't a total restruct, Damon said. Do you understand that?
I know as much as they told me.
The car was coming slowly to rest in Green 1.
The doors opened on one of the busiest corridors in Pell. Other passengers wanted in. Damon took Tally's arm, shepherded him through. Some few heads turned at their presence in the crowd, the sight of a stranger in unusual aspect, or the face of a Constantine, mild curiosity. Voices babbled, undisturbed. Music drifted from the concourse, thin, sweet notes. A few of the Downer workers were in the corridor, tending the plants which grew there. He and Tally walked with the general flow of traffic, anonymous within it. The hall opened onto the concourse, a darkness which the only light in it coming from the huge projection screens which were its walls. Views of stars, of Downbelow's crescent, of the blaze of the filtered sun, the docks viewed from outside cameras. The music was leisurely, an enchantment of electronics and chimes and sometime quiver of bass, balanced moment by moment to the soft tenor of conversation at the tables which filled the center of the curving hall. The screens changed with the ceaseless spin of Pell itself, and images switched in time from one to another to the screens which extended from floor to lofty ceiling. The floor and the tiny human figures and the tables alone were dark. Gwen Constantine, he said to the young woman at the counter by the entry. A waiter at once moved to guide them to the reserved table. But Tally had stopped. Damon looked back, found him staring about at the screens with a heart-open look on his face. "Josh," Damon said, and when he did not react, gently took his arm. "This way." Balance deserted some newcomers to the concourse. Difficulty with the slow spin of the images which dwarfed the tables. He kept the grip all the way to the table, a prime one on the margin, with unimpeded view of the screens. Eileen rose at their arrival. "Josh Tally," Damon said. "Eileen Quen, my wife." Eileen blinked. Most reacted to Tally. Slowly, she extended her hand, which he took. "Josh, is it? Eileen." She settled back to her chair, and they took theirs. The waiter stood expectantly. I don't know who's saying this." "Another," she said. "Special?" Damon said, looking at Tally. "Any preference? Or trust me?" Tally shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "Two," Damon said, and the waiter vanished. He looked at Eileen. "Crowded this evening." Not many residents go to Dockside lately," Eileen said. That was so. The beached merchanters had staked out a couple of the bars exclusively, a running problem with security. "They serve dinner here," Damon said, looking at Tally. "Sandwiches, at least." "I've eaten," he said in a remote tone, fit to stop any conversation. "Have you?" Eileen asked. "Spent much time on stations?" Damon reached for her hand under the table, but Tally shook his head, quite undisturbed. "Only Russell's. Pell is the best of them." She slid past that pit without looking at it. One shot declined, Damon thought, wondering if Eileen meant what she did. "Nothing like this at the others." "Quen is a merchanter name." "Was. They were destroyed at Mariner." Damon clenched his hand on hers in her lap. Tally stared at her, stricken. "I'm sorry." Eileen shook her head. "Not your fault, I'm sure. Merchanters get it from both sides. Bad luck, that's all." "He can't remember," Damon said. "Can you?" Eileen asked. Tally shook his head slightly. "So," Eileen said, "it's neither here nor there. I'm glad you could come. The deep spat you out. Only a stationer dice with you?" Damon remained perplexed, but Tally smiled wanly, some remote joke he seemed to comprehend. "I suppose so." "Luck and luck," Eileen said, glanced aside at him, and tightened her hand. "You can dice and win on Dockside, but old Deep loads his. Carry a man like that for luck. Touch him for it. Here's to survivors, Josh Tally." Bitter irony, or an effort at welcome? It was merchanter's humor, impenetrable as another language. Tally seemed relaxed by it. Damon drew back his hand and settled back.
Did they discuss the matter of a job, Josh?
No.
You are discharged. If you can't work, station will carry you for a while, but I did arrange something tentatively that you can go to on mornings, work as long as you feel able, go back home by noon, main days. Would that appeal to you?
Tally said nothing, but the look on his face, half lit in the image of the sun, it was nearest now, in the slow rotation, wanted it, hung on it. Damon leaned his arms on the table, embarrassed now to give the little that he had arranged.
A disappointment, perhaps. You have higher qualifications. Small machine salvage, a job at least. On your way to something else. And I've found a room for you in the old Merchanter's Central Hospice. Bath, but no kitchen. Things are incredibly tight. Your job credit is guaranteed by station law to cover basic food and lodging. Since you don't have a kitchen, your card's good in any restaurant up to a certain limit. There's things you have to pay for above that, but there's always a schedule in comp list to there's always a schedule in comp to list volunteer service jobs that you can apply for to get extras. Eventually, station will demand a full day's work for board and room, but not till you're certified able. Is that all right with you?
I'm free?
For all reasonable purposes, yes.
The drinks arrived. Damon picked up his frothy concoction of summer fruit and alcohol, watched with interest as Tally sampled one of the delicacies of Pell, and reacted with pleasure. He sipped at his own.
You're no stationer, Eileen observed after some silence.
Tally was gazing beyond them, to the walls, to the slow ballet of stars.
You don't get much view on a ship, Eileen had said once, trying to explain to him. Not what you'd think. It's the being there, the working of it, the feel of moving through what could surprise you at any moment. It's being a dust speck in that scale and pushing your way through all that empty on your own terms, that no world can do and nothing spinning around one. It's doing that and knowing all the time old Goblin Deep is just the other side of the metal that you're leaning on. You stationers like your illusions, and world folk, blue skiers, don't even know what real is.
He felt a chill suddenly, felt apart, with Eileen and a stranger across the table making a set of two. His wife and the god image that was Tally. It was not jealousy. It was a sense of panic. He drank slowly, watched Tally, who looked at the screens as no stationer did, like a man remembering breathing.
Forget station, he had heard in Eileen's voice. You'll never be content here.
As if she and Tally spoke a language he did not, even using the same words. As if a merchanter who had lost her ship to Union could pity a Unioner who had lost his, beached like her. Damon reached out beneath the table, sought Eileen's hand, closed it in his.
Maybe I can't give you what you want most. Maybe I can't give you what you most want, he said to Tally, resisting hurt, deliberately courteous. Pell won't hold you forever now, and if you can find some merchanter to take you on after your papers are entirely clear, that's open too some day in the future. But take my advice. Plan for a long stay here. Things aren't settled, and the merchanters are moving nowhere but to the mines and back.
The long haulers are drinking themselves blind on dockside, Eileen muttered. We'll run out of liquor before we run out of bread on Pell. No, not for a while. Things'll get better. God help us, we can't contain what we've swallowed forever.
Eileen.
Isn't he on Pell too? She asked. And aren't we all? His living is tied up with it.
I would not, Tally said, harm Pell.
His hand moved on the table, a slight tick. It was one of the few implants, that aversion. Damon kept his mouth shut on the knowledge of that psych block. That psych block. It was no less real for being deep taught. Tally was intelligent. Possibly even he could figure eventually what had been done with it, done to him. Tally made another random motion of his hand. Don't know this place. I need help. Sometimes I'm not sure how I got into this. Do you know? Did I know? bizarre connection of data. Damon stared at him disquietedly, for a moment afraid that Tally was lapsing into some embarrassing sort of hysteria, not sure what he was going to do with him in this public place. I have the records, he answered Tally's question. That's all the knowledge I have of it. Am I your enemy? I don't think so. I remember Citeen. You're making connections I'm not following, Josh. Lips trembled. I don't follow them either. You said you needed help. In what, Josh? Here, the station. You won't stop coming by. You mean visiting you? You won't be in the hospital anymore. Suddenly the sense of it dawned on him that Tally knew that. You mean do I set you up with a job and cut you loose on your own? Nah, I'll call you next week, depend on it. I was going to suggest, Eileen said smoothly, that you give Josh comp clearance and to get a call through to the apartment. Troubles don't keep office hours, and one or the other of us would be able to untangle situations. We are, legally, your sponsors. If you can't get hold of Damon, call my office. Tally accepted that with a nod of his head. The shifting screens kept their dizzying course. They did not say much for a long time, listened to the music, and nursed that round of drinks into a second. It would be nice, Eileen said firmly, if you'd come to dinner at the end of the week. Chance my cooking. Have a game of cards. You play cards, surely. Tally's eyes shifted subtly in his direction, as if to ask approval. It's a long-standing card night, Damon said. Once a month, my brother and his wife would cross shifts with ours. They were on altar day, transferred to Downbelow since the crisis. Josh does play, he said to Eileen. Good. Not superstitious, Tally said. We won't bet. I'll come. Fine, fine, she said, and a moment later Josh's eyes half-lidded. He was fighting it, came around in an instant. All the tension was out of him. Josh, Damon said, you think you can walk out of here? I'm not sure, he said, distressed. Damon rose, and Eileen did. Very carefully, Tally pushed back from the table and navigated between them. Not the two drinks, Damon thought, which had been mild, but the screens and exhaustion. Tally steadied once in the corridor and seemed to catch his breath in the light and stability. Out there. A trio of downers stared at them round-eyed above the masks. They both walked him to the lift and rode with him back to the facility in red, returned him through the glass doors and into the custody of the security desk. They were into altar day now, and the guard on duty was one of the Mullers. See he gets settled all right, Damon said. Beyond the desk, Tally paused, looked back at them with curious intensity, until the guard came back and drew him down the corridor. Damon put his arm about Eileen, and they started their own walk home. It was a good thought to ask him, he said. He's awkward, Eileen said, but who wouldn't be? She followed him through the doors into the corridor, walked hand in hand with him down the hall. The war has nasty casualties, she said. If any Quens could have come through Mariner, it would be that, just the other side of the mirror, wouldn't it? For one of my own. So, God help us, help him. He could as well be one of ours. She had drunk rather more than he, grew morose whenever she did so. He thought of the baby, but it was not the moment to say anything hard with her. He gave her hand a squeeze, ruffled her hair, and they headed home. Chapter 2. Citeen Station, Security Area, September 8th, 2352. Marsh had not yet arrived, not baggage or man. Ayres settled in with the others, chose his room of the four which opened by sliding partitions onto a central area, the whole thing an affair of movable panels, white on silver tracks. The furniture was on tracks, spare, efficient, not comfortable. It was the fourth such change of lodgings they had suffered in the last 10 days, lodging not far removed from the last, not visibly different from the last, no less guarded by the young mannikins, ubiquitous and armed, in the corridors, the same for the months they had been at this place before the shifting about started. They did not, in effect, know where they were, whether on some station near the first or orbiting Cytene itself. Questions obtained only evasions. Security, they said of the moves, and patience. Ayres maintained calm before his companion delegates, the same as he did before the various dignitaries and agencies, both military and civilian, if that had any distinction in the Union, which questioned him, interrogations and discussions both singly and in a group. He had stated he had stated the reasons and the conditions of their appeal for peace until the inflections of his voice became automatic, until he had memorized the responses of his companions to the same questions, until the performance became just that, performance, an end in itself, something which they might do endlessly, to the limit of the patience of their hosts/interrogators. Had they been negotiating on Earth, they would have long since given up, declared disgust, applied other tactics. That was not an option here. They were vulnerable. They did as they could. His companions had borne themselves well in this distressing circumstance, save Marsh. Marsh grew nervous, restless, tense. And it was, of course, Marsh the Unionists singled out for particular attention. When they were in single session, Marsh was gone from their midst longest. In the 4 times they had been shifted lately, Marsh was the last to move in. Bela and Diaz had not commented on this. They did not discuss or speculate on anything. Ayres did not remark on it. Settling in one of the several chairs in the living area of their suite and picking up from the inevitable vid set the latest propaganda the Unionists provided for their entertainment, either closed circuit or, if it were station vid, it indicated mentalities incredibly tolerant of boredom, histories years old, accounts cataloging the alleged atrocities committed by the company and the company fleet. He had seen it all before. They had requested access to the transcripts of their own interviews with the local authorities, but these were denied them. Their own facilities for making such records, even writing materials, had been stolen from their luggage, and their protests were deferred and ignored. These folk had an utter lack of respect for diplomatic conventions. Typical, Ayres thought, of the situation, of authority upheld by rifle-bearing juveniles with mad eyes and ready recitations of regulations. They most frightened him, the young, the mad-eyed, the 2 same young ones. Fanatic, because they knew only what was poured into their heads. Put in on tape, likely, beyond reason. Don't talk with them, he had warned his companions. Do whatever they ask, and make your arguments only to their superiors. He had long since lost the thread of the broadcast. He cast a look up and about, where Diaz sat with her eyes fixed on the screen, where Bella played a game of logic with makeshift pieces. Surreptitiously, Ayres looked at his watch, which he had tried to sync with the hours of the Unionists, which were not Earth's hours, nor Pell's, nor the standard kept by the company. An hour late now, an hour since they had arrived here. He bit at his lips, doggedly turned his mind to the material on the screen, which was no more than anesthetic. And not effective, and not even effective at that. The slanders they had gotten used to. If this was supposed to annoy them, it did not. There was, eventually, a touch at the door. It opened. Ted Marsh slipped in, carrying his 2 bags. There was a glimpse of 2 young guards in the corridor, armed. The door closed. Marsh walked through with his eyes downcast, but all the bedroom doors were slid closed. "Which?" he asked, compelled to stop and ask of them. "Other side, other way," Ayres said. Marsh slung back across the room and set his bags down at that door. His brown hair fell in disorder, thin strands about his ears. His collar was rumpled. He would not look at them. All his movements were small and nervous. "Where have you been?" Ayres asked sharply before he could escape. Marsh darted a look back. Foul up in my assignment here. Their computer had me listed somewhere else. The others had looked up, listened. Marsh stared at him and sweated. Challenge the lie, show distress. The rooms were all monitored. They were sure of it. He could call Marsh a he could call Marsh a liar and make clear that the game was reaching another level. They could, his instincts shrank from it, take the man into the bathroom and drown the truth out of him as efficiently as Union could question him. Marsh's nerves could hardly stand up to them if they did so. The gain was questionable on all fronts. Perhaps, pity urged at him, Marsh was keeping his ordered silence. Perhaps Marsh wanted to confide in them and obeyed his orders for silence instead, suffering in loyalty. He doubted it. Of course the Unionists had settled on him. Not a weak man, but the weakest of their four. Marsh glanced aside, carried his bags into his room, slid the door shut. Ayres refused even to exchange glances with the others. The monitoring was probably visual as well, and continuous. He faced the screen and watched the vid. Time was what they wanted, time gained by this means or gained by negotiations. The stress was thus far bearable. They daily argued with Union, a changing parade of officials. Union agreed to their proposals in principle, professed interest, talked and discussed, sent them to this or that committee, quibbled on points of protocol. On protocol, when materials were stolen from their luggage. It was all stalling on both sides, and he wished he knew why on theirs. Military action was surely proceeding, something which might not benefit their side in negotiation. They would get the outcome dropped in their laps at some properly critical phase, would be expected to cede something further. Pell, of course. Pell was the most likely session to ask. Pell was the most likely session to ask, and that could not be allowed. The surrender of company officers to Union's revolutionary justice was another likely item. Not feasible, in fact, although some meaningless document could be arranged in compromise. Outlawry, perhaps. He had no intention of signing fleet personnel lives away if he could help it, but a yielding of objection on prosecution of some station officials classed as state enemies, that might have to be. Union would do as it wished anyway, and what happened this far remote would have little political impact on Earth. What the visual media could not carry into living rooms, the general public could not remain exercised about. Statistically, a majority of the electorate could not or did not read complicated issues. No pictures, no news. No news, no event. No great sympathy on the part of the public, nor sustained interest from the media. Safe politics for the company. So, something that I have commented on before is CJ Cherryh uses a lot of punctuation that other people tend not to. You tend not to see the semicolon, for instance. You also tend not to see ellipses done in a way that isn't tedious, just as sentence enders. She uses them as an extended hyphen of sorts occasionally. She didn't use any in that last passage. This was the passage that says, I know how to use semicolons, and a lot of them. Do you like the semicolon? Do you like that dot on top of a comma? Do you enjoy that? Well, guess what, buddy old pal? This is going to get you going. Because that's what this was. Let me read it aloud, uh, including the including the punctuation. Statistically, a majority of the electorate could not or did not read complicated issues, no pictures, no news, no news, no event, no great sympathy on the part of the public, nor sustained interest from the media, safe politics for the company, period. Good times. Above all, they could not jeopardize the majority they had won on other issues, the half-century of careful maneuvering, the discrediting of isolationist leaders. The sacrifices already made. Others were inevitable. Inevitable. He listened to the idiot vid, searched the propaganda for evidence to clarify the situation, listened to the reports of Union's alleged benefits to its citizens, its vast programs of internal improvement. Of other things he would wish to know, the extent of Union territory in directions other than earthward, the number of bases in their possession, what had happened at the fallen stations, whether they were actively developing further territories or whether the war had effectively engaged their resources to the utmost. These pieces of information were not available. Nor was there information to indicate just how extensive the rumored birth labs were, what proportion of the citizenry they produced, or what treatment those individuals received. 1,000 times he cursed the recalcitrance of the fleet, of Signy Mallory in particular. No knowing ultimately whether his course had been the right one, to exclude the fleet from his operation. No knowing what would have happened had the fleet fallen in line. They were now where they must be, even if it was this white set of rooms like all the other white sets of rooms they had experienced. They were doing what they had to. Without the fleet, which could have given them negotiating strength, minor, which could have given them oh shoot, I just read that. Without the fleet, which could have given them negotiating strength, minor, or proven a frighteningly random third side in the negotiations. The stubbornness of Pell had not helped. Pell, which chose to placate the fleet. With support from the station, they might have had some impact on the mentality of such as Mallory. Which still returned to the question whether a fleet which considered its own interests paramount could be persuaded to anything. Mazian and his like could never be controlled for the length of time it would take Earth to prepare for defense. They were not, he reminded himself, not Earthborn. Not regulation followers, to judge by his sight of them. Like the scientific personnel who had reacted to Earth's emigration bans and summons homeward back in the old days, by deserting further beyond. To Union, ultimately. Or to be like the Constantins, who had been tyrants so long in their own little empire, that they felt precious little responsibility toward Earth. And this terrified him when he let himself think about it. He had not expected the difference out there, had not expected the Union mentality, which seemed to slant off toward some angle of behavior neither parallel nor quite opposite to their own. Union tried to break them down, this bizarre game with Marsh, which was surely a case of divide and conquer. Therefore he refused to engage Marsh. Marsh, Bella, and Diaz did not have detailed information in them. They were simply company officers, and what they knew was not that dangerous. He had sent back to Earth the two delegates who, like himself, knew too much, sent them back to say that the fleet could not be managed, and that stations were collapsing. That much was done. He and his companions here played the game they were given, maintained monastic silence at all times, suffered without comment the shifts in lodging and the disarrangements which were meant to unbalance them, a tactic merely aimed at weakening them in negotiation, Ayres hoped, and not that more dire possibility, that it presaged a seizure of their own persons for interrogation. They went through the motions, hoped that they were closer to success on the treaty than they had been. And Marsh moved through their midst, sat in their sessions, regarded them in private with a bruised, dishevelled look, without their moral support. Because to ask reasons or offer comfort was to breach the silence which was their defensive wall. Why? Ayres had written once on a plastic tabletop by Marsh's arm. In the oil of his fingertip, something he trusted no lens could pick up. And when that had gained no reaction, what? Marsh had erased both, and written nothing, turned his face away, his lips trembling in imminent breakdown. Ayres had not repeated the question. Now at length he rose, walked to Marsh's door, slid it open without knocking. Marsh sat on his bed, fully clothed, arms locked across his ribs, staring at the wall, or beyond it. Ayres walked over to him, bent down by his ear. "Concisely," he said in the faintest of whispers, not sure even that would fail to be heard. "What do you think is going on? Have they been questioning you? Answer me." A moment passed. Marsh shook his head slowly. "Answer," Ayres said. "I am singled out for days," Marsh said, a whisper that stammered. "My assignments are never in order. There's always some mix-up. They keep me sitting and waiting for hours. That's all, sir." "I believe you," Ayres said. He was not sure he did, but he offered it all the same, and patted Marsh's shoulder. Marsh broke down and cried, tears pouring down a face which struggled to be composed. The supposed cameras, they were eternally conscious of the cameras they believed to be present. Ayres was shaken by this, the suspicion that they themselves were Marsh's tormentors as much as Union. He left the room and walked back into the other. And swelling with anger, he stopped amid the room, turned his face up to the complicated crystal light fixture which was his chiefest suspicion of monitoring. "I protest," he said sharply, "this deliberate and unwarranted harassment. 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 I must remember, he is speaking like this, therefore he says things like lieutenant, and has a slightly different pronunciation of what I would normally go with. So there. I protest," he said sharply, "this deliberate and unwarranted harassment." Then he turned and sat down, watched the vid again. His companions had reacted no more than to look up. The silence resumed. So something I like about Union, and we'll learn more about this in Citeen, and you've seen a bit of it now, like their entire deal in terms of one of their entire deals, one of their characteristics is it's like spook o'clock all the time. It like everything with them feels like weird subterfuge CIA or KGB style skullduggery, um, which makes them fairly entertaining in a way, but also mostly because they're spooky in both sense of the term, both senses of the term. They're rather more than that, as it turns out. They've got a lot going on. Citeen is going to give a pretty good expansion on what that entails. Um, but it's politicking. There's a lot of politicking with them. There was no acknowledgment of the incident in the next morning, in the arrival of the day's schedule, carried by a gun-wearing mannequin. Meeting 0800, it informed them. The day was starting early. There was no other information, not topic nor with whom nor with not topic nor with whom nor where, not even mention for arrangements of lunch, which were usually included. Marsh came out of his room, shadow-eyed as if he had not slept. "We don't have much time for breakfast," Ayres said. It was usually delivered to their quarters at 7:30, and it was within a few minutes of that time. The light at the door flashed a second time. It opened from the outside. No breakfast, rather a trio of mannequin guards. "Ayres," one said. Just that, without courtesies. "Come." He bit back a reply. There was no arguing with them. He had told his people so. He looked at the others, went back and got his jacket, playing the same game, taking time and deliberately irritating those waiting on him. When he reckoned that he had delayed as long as made the point, he came alone to the door and into the custody of the young guards. Marsh, he could not help thinking. What was their game with Marsh? They brought him down the corridor in the correct direction for the lift, through the lift sequence and halls without marking or designation, into the conference rooms and offices, which relieved his immediate apprehensions. They entered a familiar room and passed through into one of the three interview rooms they used. Military this time. The silver-haired man at the small circular table had metal enough studding the pocket flap of his black uniform to have made up the ranks of the last several he had talked to combined. Insane pattern of insignia. No knowing what, precisely, the intricate emblems represented. Amusing, on one level, that Union had managed to evolve so complex a system of medals and insignia, as if all that metal were meant to impress. But it was authority and power, and that was not amusing at all. Delegate Ayres. The gray-haired man, gray with rejuve by the scarcely lined vigor of the face, a drug entirely common out here, available on Earth only in inferior substitutes, rose and offered his hand. Ayres took it solemnly. Seb Azov, the man introduced himself, from the Directorate. Pleasure to meet you, sir. The central government. The Directorate was, he had learned, now a body of 312. Whether this related to the number of stations and worlds in some proportion, he was not aware. It met not only on Cytine, but elsewhere, and how one got into it he did not know. This man was, beyond doubt, military. I regret, Ayres said coldly, to begin our acquaintance with a protest, Citizen Azov, but I refuse to talk until a certain matter is cleared up. Azov lifted bland brows, sat down again. The matter, sir? The harassment to which one of my party is being subjected. Harassment, sir? He knew. He was, he knew, supposed to lose his composure, give way to nervousness or anger. He refused either. Delegate Marsh and your computer seem to find difficulty locating his room assignments. Remarkable, since we are inevitably lodged together. I rate your technical competency above that. I am unable to name it anything but harassment that this man is kept waiting hours while alleged discrepancies are sorted out. I maintain that this is harassment designed to lessen our efficiency through exhaustion. I complain of other tactics, such as the inability of your staff to provide us recreational opportunity or room for exercise, such as the inevitable insistence of your staff that they lack authorizations, such as the evasive responses of your staff when we make an inquiry regarding the name of this base. We were promised Cytine. How are we to know whether we are speaking to authorized persons or merely to low-level functionaries of no competency or authority to negotiate the serious matters on which we have come? We have traveled a far distance, citizen, to settle a grievous and dangerous situation, and we have received precious little cooperation from the persons we have met here. It was not improvisation. He had prepared the speech for an occasion of opportunity, and the visible brass presented the target. Clearly, Azov was a little taken aback by the attack. Ayres maintained a front of anger, the best miming he had yet done, for he was terrified. His heart hammered against his ribs, and he hoped his color had not changed perceptibly. It will be attended, Azov said after a moment. I should prefer, said Ayres, stronger assurance. Azov sat staring at him a moment. Take my word, he said in a tone that quivered with force. You will be satisfied. Will you sit, sir? We have some business at hand. Accept my personal apology for the inconvenience to Delegate Marsh. It will be investigated and remedied. He considered walking out, considered further argument, considered the man in front of him, and took the offered chair. Azov's eyes fixed on him with, he thought, some measure of respect. On your word, sir, Ayres said. I regret the matter. I can say little more at the moment. There is a pressing matter regarding the negotiations. We've come upon what you might call a situation. He pressed a button on the table console. Kindly send in Mr. Jacoby. Ayres looked toward the door, slowly, betraying no strong anxiety, although he felt it. The door opened. A man in civilian clothing came in. Civilian, not the uniforms or uniform-like suits which had distinguished all who had previously dealt with them. Mr. Sigurd Ayres, Mr. Dain Jacoby of Pell Station. I understand you've met. Ayres rose, extending his hand to this arrival in cold courtesy, liking it all less and less. A casual meeting, perhaps. Forgive me, I don't remember you. I wish I remembered what voice I used for Jacoby, because I forgot that he was still in the script. Give me a moment. Counsel, Mr. Ayres. The hand gripped his and withdrew without warmth. Jacoby accepted the gestured offer of a third chair at the round table. A three-cornered conference, Azov murmured. Oh no, that's a slip. Oh no. I'm not saying anyone's about to die, but I don't know. Azov's capable. A three-cornered conference, Azov murmured. Your terms, Mr. Ayres, claim Pell and stations in advance of it as the territory you wish to protect. This doesn't seem to be in accord with the wishes of the citizens of that station, and you are on record as supporting the principle of self-determination. This man, Ayres said, without looking at Jacoby, is no one of consequence on Pell, and has no authority to make agreements. I suggest you consult with Mr. Angelo Constantin, and send appropriate inquiries to the station council. I don't, in fact, know this person, and as for any claims he makes to be on the council, I can't attest to their validity. Azov smiled. We have an offer from Pell, which we are accepting. This does throw into question. Oh, gosh, drop your bookmark, you schmuck. This does throw into question the proposals under discussion, since without Pell, you would be laying claim to an island within Union territory. Stations which, I must tell you, are already part of Union territory by similar decisions. You have no territory in the beyond. None. Ayres sat still, feeling the blood draining from his extremities. This is not negotiation in good faith. Your fleet is now without a single base, sir. We have utterly cut them off. We call on you to perform a humanitarian act. You should inform them of the fact and of their alternatives. There's no need for the loss of ships and lives in defense of a territory which no longer exists. Your cooperation will be appreciated, sir. I am outraged! Ayres exclaimed. That may be, Azov said, but in the interest of saving lives, you may choose to send that message. Pell has not seated itself. You're likely to find the real situation different from what you imagine, Citizen Azov, and when you wish better terms with us, and when you wish better terms from us, when you want that trade which might profit us both, consider what you're throwing away. Earth is one world. He said nothing, had nothing to say. He did not want to argue the desirability of Earth. The matter of Pell, said Azov, is an easy one. Do you know the vulnerability of a station? And when the will of the citizenry supports those outside, a very simple matter. No destruction, that's not our purpose. But the fleet will not operate successfully in the absence of a base, and you hold none. We sign the articles you ask, including the arrangement of Pell as a common meeting point, but in our hands, not yours. But in our hands, not yours. No difference, really, save in the observance of the will of the people, which you claim to hold so dear. It was better than it might have been, but it was designed to appear so. There are, he said, no representatives of the citizens of Pell here, only a self-appointed spokesman. I would like to see his letters of authorization. Azov gathered up a leather-bound folder from before him. You might be interested in this, sir. The document you offered us, signed by the government and the rectorate of Union, and the council precisely as you worded it, abstracting the control of stations which are now in our hands, and a few minor words regarding the status of Pell. The words under company management have been struck, here and on the trade document. 3 small words. All else is yours, precisely as you gave it. I understand that you are, due to distances, empowered to sign on behalf of your governments and the company. Refusal was on his lips. He considered it, as he was in the habit of considering what slipped from him. Subject to ratification by my government. The absence of those words would cause distress. I hope you will urge them to acceptance, sir, after reflection. Azov laid the folder on the table and slid it toward him. Examine it at your leisure. From our side, it is firm. All the provisions you desired, all the provisions, to put it frankly, that you can possibly ask, since your territories do not exist.
I frankly doubt that.
Ah, that is your privilege. But doubt doesn't alter fact, sir. I suggest that you content yourself with what you have won. Trade agreements which will profit us all, and heal a long breach. Mr. Ayres, what more in reason do you think you can ask? That we cede what the citizens of Pell are willing to give us?
Misrepresentation.
Yet you lack any means to investigate, thus confessing your own limitations of control and possession. You say the government which sent you from Earth has undergone profound changes, and that we must deal with you as a new entity, forgetting all past grievances as irrelevant. Does this new entity propose to meet our signing of their document with further demands? I would suggest, sir, that your military strength is at a low ebb, that you have no means to verify anything, that you were obliged to come here in a series of freighters at the whim of merchanters, that a hostile posture is not to the good of your government.
You are making threats.
Stating realities. A government without ships, without control of its own military, and without resources, is not in a position to insist that its document be signed without changes. We have abstracted meaningless clauses in 3 words, leaving the government of Pell essentially in the hands of whatever government the citizens of Pell choose to establish. And is this a fit matter for objection on the part of the interest you represent?
Ayres sat still a moment. I have to consult with others of my delegation. I don't choose to do so with monitoring in progress.
There is no monitoring.
We believe to the contrary.
Again, you are without the means to verify this one way or the other. You must proceed as best you can.
Ayres took the folder. Don't expect me or my staff at any meetings today. We'll be in conference.
As you will.
Azov rose, extended his hand. Jacobi remained seated and offered no courtesy. I don't promise signature.
A conference. I quite understand, sir. Pursue your own course. But I should suggest that you seriously consider the effects of refusing this agreement. Presently we consider our border to be Pell. We are leaving you the hinder stars, which you may, if you wish, develop to your profit. In case of failure of this agreement, we shall set our own boundaries, and we will be direct neighbors.
His heart was beating very hard. This was nearing ground he did not want to discuss at all.
Further, said Azov, should you wish to save the lives of your fleet and recover those ships, we've added to that folder a document of our own, contingent on your agreement to attempt the recall of the fleet and your order to them to withdraw to the territories you have taken for your boundary by the signature of this treaty. We will drop all charges against them and against other enemies of the state which you may name. We'll permit them to withdraw under our escort and to accompany you home, although we understand that this is at considerable hazard to our side.
We are not aggressive.
We could better believe that did you not refuse to call off your ships, which are presently attacking our citizens.
I've told you flatly that I have no command over the fleet and no power to recall it.
We believe that you might use considerable influence. We will make facilities available to you for the transmission of a message. The cessation of hostilities will follow the fleet ceasefire.
We'll consider the matter.
Sir.
Ayres bowed, turned, walked out, met by the ever-present young guards, who began to guide him elsewhere among the offices. The other meeting has been cancelled, he informed them. We go back to my quarters. All my companions do. We have our orders, the foremost said, which was all they ever said.
It would be straightened out only when they reached the site of the 0800 meeting and gathered the whole party, a new group of young guards then to guide them back, long waiting in between while things were cleared through channels. This was always the way of things. Inefficiency meant to drive them mad. His hand sweated on the leather of the folder he was given, the folder with the documents signed by the government of Union. Pell lost. A chance to recover at least the fleet and a proposal which might destroy it. He much feared that the government of Union was planning further ahead than Earth imagined. The long view. Union had been born with it. Earth was only now acquiring it. He felt transparent and vulnerable. We know you're stalling. He imagined the thoughts behind Azov's broad, powerful face. We know you want to gain time, and why, and for now it suits us too. A trifling agreement we and you will abrogate at earliest convenience. Union had swallowed all it meant to digest. For now. They could not afford debate, could not raise deadly issues in a privacy they probably did not have. Sign it and carry it home. What he had in his head was the important matter. They had learned the beyond. It was about them in the person of soldiers with a single face and virtually a single mind. In the defiance of Norway's captain, the arrogance of the Constantins, the merchanters who ignored a war that had been going on all about them for generations. Attitudes Earth had never understood, that different powers rule out here, different logic. Generations which had shaken the dust of Earth from off their feet. Getting home. By signing a meaningless paper Mazian would never heed, no more than Mallory would come to heel for the asking. Getting back alive was the important thing, to make understood what he had seen. For that he would do the necessary things, sign a lie, and hope. And with that, we will call it for Wednesday. We've gotten some politicking. We've gotten some idea of what life is like on Downbelow, on Pell itself. Um, yeah, we're moving along. Things are happening. We're moving and a shaking. Oh, go. Things be happening. But yeah, Union's pretty fascinating. You get some idea of what they get. They're kind of like weaponized bureaucracy in some ways. Um, we'll see more of that when we get to 40,000 at Gehenna, and we'll see a lot more of that when we get to Cytene and Regenesis, Cytene's direct sequel. This won't be for a while. First of all, we've got this book to get through, and we're not quite halfway done. We will be closer to halfway done next week. Yeah, we're more like a third of the way through. Um, there's a couple other books I'd like to read that are set around this time period or in the immediate aftermath, such as, what is it? Rim Runners, I think, and Merchanter's Luck. So I do want to get to those. And 40,000 at Gehenna. 40,000 at Gehenna is not it's not absolutely mandatory for Cytene, but it comes up more than once in Cytene. So it's kind of I feel it's relevant to have under our belts. It's going to be a rather different story. So if you're expecting Cytene, the book, to be similar to 40,000 at Gehenna, it's not. It's not at all. They're very, very different animals. Um, 40,000 at Gehenna, I mean, they're all kind of speculative fiction in their way. 40,000 at Gehenna seems a bit more speculative, perhaps, in some ways. We'll get there. We'll get there. We're going to learn some things about Union in this book. We're going to have a bit of a perspective shift from other characters as well. Cool stuff is ahead. I had honestly completely forgotten about the Seagust Heirs portions of this volume. So them happening, I'm like, oh right, this is a thing. This is where you get your taste of Union. Oh good. Um, so it's been nice. Anyway, that'll do it for today. Um, Hopefully people enjoyed. If you didn't enjoy, I'm sorry. If you did enjoy, I'm sorry. Maybe. That depends. Anyway, yeah, hopefully people did enjoy. We're going to go with that. We're going to remain optimistic. Let's see. Anything? Right. So this Friday will be the last installment of the Lazarus Effect. So that's gonna be coming up. Um, I don't want to see it go. I don't want it to end. Um, After that, next week we will get started on Death's End, the third volume of the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy, or Three Body trilogy, by Shishinu. Um, Once we finish that, we will read the last volume of the Pandora sequence entitled The Ascension Factor. And from there, I have absolutely no idea what we're going to be doing because that's months from now. That's like 3 or 4 months from now. It's a ways out. Um, for Wednesdays, we've got a lot of Down Below station to read through, so I don't know what I'll be doing next. I might go straight to more CJ Cherryh. I might throw something else in there to shake it up. I don't know yet. Um, Merchant's Luck is pretty short, so we might do that right after. Um, as for Mecha Mondays, we're 1 or 2 installments away from the first collection of the Full Metal Panic series. I don't know what I'll do after that immediately, but yeah. I got some BattleTech I could read. I'm also gearing up to do a read through on my own time of the Zeta Gundam. There's, I think, 5 books in that. I'd do them all in one go, probably, because they're not terribly long. But yeah, it's yeah, it's a fun, lighthearted series. It's kind of corny and in some ways kind of sophomoric, but it's entertainment. And it knows that it's entertainment. It's willing to play around in that space and be both a goofy, dumb high school rom-com with teenage angst, as well as also be a military thriller. So I find it entertaining and fun. Other people might not. We'll find out. Uh, so other things on the horizon. I can't think of anything off the top of my noggin. There's surely something I'm not thinking of. Should be no interruptions that are foreseen for quite some time. So we'll pretty much continue as we've been continuing. Alrighty. With that, I'm going to leave you all. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other, and I'll see you next time.